Hey, Caitlin wanted me to wait till her yawns were done, but here we are, live
I
in
feel
front of
stuck.
friends. So we're about a minute early, so we're gonna let this thing kind of run and load up and get people here and
We can cut off
hang
this
out.
minute too.
I mean, someone could. I don't know how to do that. So if you're here live, welcome. If you're gonna watch later, welcome. Look, gonna apologize in advance for Caitlin and I's delirium here. We're both pretty tired, but we're here. And I think that's something a lot of us are going through with this crazy year.
Yep.
So you just got to be real about it. So we'll give this thing another 10 seconds and we'll rock and roll. All right, so just stare awkwardly.
Okay. We can do that real well.
Yeah, it's like half your job as a counselor, right? Um, so, welcome everybody to episode 21 of the Justin
And Caitlin show.
Hey, man, cool. Kind of concluding season 1 here. If you got questions for us about anything we've covered in these shows, I mean, there's 20 episodes. You're like, well, you said episode 21. That's only because I forgot a number early on and I just haven't fixed it. So if you got any questions, if you want to look back at any of our shows or anything we've posted on our Facebook page or Instagram, feel free to direct message us either on Facebook or Instagram. And if we get about 5, 6, 7, 8 questions for us to do a kind of a ask me anything or ask me about therapy thing, we'll do an episode 22.
Yep.
If not, we're going to conclude tonight as a season ender. But yeah, so tonight's going to conclude our Parts of Self series, and we're going to end with the loving adult. Again, we're going to give credit to our professor, Dr. Lawson, for putting this whole framework together and really allowing us to jump off and add all kinds of little things to and build out and frame it how we see it too. And so yeah, Caitlin, why don't you kick us off into this road? What categorizes a loving adult?
Yeah. And what's great is that we've been building on this every week, whether it's been with the child, the adolescent, or the critical parent. We've constantly mentioned this aspect of having this loving adult and how it corresponds to those different parts. So I know Justin's really going to break that down later as kind of a recap of where we've been the past month. But tonight, and for those of you analytical people like me who take notes on everything, this is what you want to take notes on. So this is what the loving adult looks like. There's this first aspect of protection and boundaries. So the loving adult is this advocacy part. It's this having healthy boundaries where you're able to see who's really safe and healthy, especially to be in your inner circle. And if not, knowing where they need to be at in your life. Sometimes I've literally had clients that love art. They've actually drawn out this house, and this house is them. And we've created a fence, and they're able to draw out, okay, what does their fence look like? Is there even a fence? Is there more of a high brick wall that no one comes through whatsoever? Do they feel like, yeah. Do they feel like some people just float like through, like it's a bubble, and they just come into the house whenever? And so as we start getting that more firm boundary, then it's, okay, where are these people now in your life? Where are these people in your house? Are they in your yard? Are they across the street? Are they in the other neighborhood? But that's part of the loving adult, and developing that aspect is having those boundaries, knowing what your boundaries are, and being able to protect and advocate for yourself. Another part is going to be unconditional love. Instead of how many of us grew up with that conditional love, where our worth and our love was based on what we could produce, the loving adult comes in with that unconditional love of, hey, you're valuable no matter what. You're worthy no matter what. It doesn't matter if you relapse tomorrow. It doesn't matter that you made that mistake. You're still lovable. And that's that aspect of unconditional love. There's also this mercy and compassion. There's grace, there's understanding. There's trust, there's forgiveness. And so, again, these were all things that ideally the adults in our lives when we were children would have modeled for us. However, for the majority of the population, that's not what happened. So as we do this parts of self-work, and especially in therapy, is we really start developing that adult self who's able to then fill these gaps, who's able to do this on a daily basis. Because again, our goal here is that this loving adult is the main part that functions, that the inner child is integrated, the adolescent is integrated, and the loving adult, like with our metaphor we've used before, is the one driving the car.
Mm-hmm.
And so as you go throughout therapy and as you really start doing this parts of self-work, what you'll start noticing is that a situation will arise. Let's say let's take something smaller. You forget to print off a form for work. So you were supposed to have it to either present to a meeting or to present to someone. You completely forgot to print off different copies. For many people, the first part that comes up is the critical parent. And there's this whole barrage of messages of either how you've messed up, how different aspects of you are worthless now, how you're not good enough, how could you have missed that? You got it, like the whole list of critical messages. And our goal here is as we develop this loving adult is for those messages to change then into, hey, it's okay. You're still loved. We can do better next time. What happened here? Let's dive into this instead of the shame coming in first. So those are going to be some of the bigger characteristics for the loving adult and how it starts changing. But now, Justin, you were going to go into, okay, now how does this interact with the child, with the adolescent, and then with the critical parent?
Yeah, and I think a big key to what you're saying is a loving adult isn't a pushover. Like you said earlier, like if you relapse, it's okay. And then you kind of like, as you kept talking, you built that out. Yeah. I think it's important to connect because it's not that it's just okay that we let everything be a doormat. Oh, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. The loving adult comes alongside and says, hey, look, we can work on this. We can get through this. We can make, let's just say, a different choice or whatever. And I love you. Mm-hmm. So it's okay to make corrections in a loving fashion versus exactly what you just said, a shaming way. Like, what the heck were you thinking? That was the stupidest thing you could have done. That's very shaming. That's very, demeaning. That's that critical parent voice. Loving adult says, hey, come over here and let's talk and, what's going on there? Yeah. And hearing it out. I love you, and let's work on this together. Mm-hmm. And it's a very, I like, and I share this with a lot of my clients too. It's honestly, it comes from my own lessons. Learn to make things a door opening experience versus a door in the face. Mm-hmm. It's okay to challenge and confront or correct in this way, but do so verbally in how we communicate in a manner that opens the door to let the person in versus you suck, that was a stupid decision, you're an idiot, boom, that's a door in the face versus hey, come on in, let's talk about what was going on there. Two very different experiences. If you're married, dating, or whatever, again, think about this. How can I create an open door situation for my wife, my husband, whoever, to step into to talk about this versus, I can't believe you didn't blah, 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 blah. That's a door in the face. That doesn't usually end well, okay? So that's kind of a lead in to, how does this loving adult engage? We've kind of mentioned it each week, towards the end of each episode for this Parts of Self series. And for the inner child, it goes into, put yourself in the framework. Even if you don't have kids, a lot of us have at least been around kids, or if you have younger cousins or something like that. Think about it. Like, okay, my little cousin Johnny is crying. What do I do? Especially if they're like 1, 2, 3 years old. What they need is not really complicated. Sometimes they may need to get picked up and just held. held and held, picked up and good grief, can't talk right now, and just held. I'll leave it at that. And that provides that loving safety, that trust that you got it and it's okay. And you say things like, "Hey, bud, you're not alone. You're safe. I love you, and it's okay." And these are the things that you nurture the child. What the child needs is very simple in the aspect of walking out, but doing it can feel very difficult, especially if we're not connected to our child. It's like how we talk about that episode, like doing art and creative things. If you're like adverse to markers, crayons, and things in the creative side, it's usually a key or a cue. And also, man, I lost my train of thought. It'll come back. But just know that with the child, what they need is simple. And what that can lead to is a lot of grief. Because when you start being able to do that for yourself, you start going, why couldn't my mom and dad do this? This wasn't that hard. All I wanted was a hug. All I wanted was someone to tell me I wasn't alone and I'll be okay. I wasn't alone. I'll be okay. 6 words and a hug would mean the world to that kid. Why couldn't I get 6 words and a hug? So that's where the loving adult comes in with the kid. It's that hug, it's that loving embrace, that safety, those kind words. Shifts gears when we hit the adolescent. Kind of like what I was getting at when I was talking to after Caitlin's section there. Remember the adolescent, they want to be heard and they want to be understood. So in order to be heard and understood, you need to listen. You need to slow down. Slow down. And allow that teenager, that adolescent part of us to share freely. And don't judge the ideas. Work with them on the ideas. Come alongside them. Allow them to be validated and heard. A lot of times they don't feel things are fair. They just allow them to express these things. This allows that anger pool to start flowing, and we access the real deal, which is the hurt, sadness, and fears. And this again allows a loving adult to come alongside, kind of with that arm over the shoulder kind of thing, like, hey. And you walk with them, because you're helping them form that identity that they're looking to, they're bouncing around with in those teenage years. But it's not this, again, that critical smashing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the critical parent, I've got 2 thoughts on this. One, you could say the loving adult's job here is to silence the critical parent, which I would say is true. Go back, listen to that show because it's a little bit of a complicated thing. I'm not going to get into it tonight. The loving adult's job there can be to silence the critical parent. And to be honest, I would say long term is to have a conversation with their critical parent and say, look, dude, I appreciate what you've done for us. I appreciate the fact you feel you're protecting us. And quite honestly, I know it's a strange way and maybe not the healthiest, but you helped us survive. So I want to thank you for that. I also want you to realize now at 34, 35 years old, that things are different. And I can handle it now. I'm no longer the 4-year-old Justin, 34, and I can take care of it. So I'm gonna ask you to leave now. And that's a sad time. That's a grieving moment, but that is a conversation you can have. Because that critical parent is that adaptive self, and that doesn't really need to stay long term. So Caitlin, it's one thing for us to sit here and say, like you talked earlier on, well, hey, be compassionate, be loving, be all these great things, show safety and trust. And people are like, yeah, that's great. That's wonderful. I'm probably in therapy because I didn't get much of that. So can you please explain what the heck that looks like?
Yep. And this is where the challenge comes in, because it is different for every single circumstance. But a pretty common thing goes back to what Justin just said, was that most people end up coming into therapy because these needs were not met when we were children. And so now as adults, we're learning how to meet these needs. And so this is where the whole being wired for connection comes in.
Mm-hmm.
We are hurt in relationships, and we also heal in relationships. And for those of you that hear that and you're like, nope, not happening, guys, I was there. I was the one during grad school that literally told the professor he was wrong, that you did not have to heal in relationships. Turns out I did not understand neuroscience, or that it was possible at the time, and it actually is possible to heal. Because here's what can happen. When these situations happen, and our critical parent is the first voice that jumps in, and the shame attack starts, and we almost feel like we're spiraling from how intense that shame is, the other person can step in as the loving adult. This is especially common in therapy, where something will happen, and we can kind of look at you as a therapist and be like, let's look at this from a different perspective. Yeah. It seems like the critical parent's driving right now. What would it look like to have the loving adult? How would the loving adult respond to this? And going back to what Justin said earlier about the grieving, that is where the grieving really hits. Is when you don't know what the loving adult would say in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
The powerful part is, as a therapist or as someone's able to step in and be that loving adult and represent that loving adult, it helps develop your own. Because sometimes we don't see that we actually do know how to be loving. We actually do know how to forgive. We know how to do these things. They've just kind of been shoved away in the closet like we talked about before. But having that connection, having that relationship can be very healing in developing this loving adult. There's also an aspect with the loving adult being acted out with safe physical touch. Now, this is a hot button. It's very difficult to describe. Many people have had pretty traumatic things happen around touch. And so one thing I know I talk to my clients about doing where this has been an issue is little massages. So when you start feeling the fear, when you start feeling the anxiety and the panic, and you can tell inner child has their hair on fire and they're trying to drive the car, or critical parents really jumping in, as the loving adult, when you recognize that, it's that safe touch that can actually be very calming, is that soft massaging of the hands. What's great is if you're in a board meeting or a meeting at work and this is occurring, you can do it below the table where you can just slowly massage your hand. And it's very comforting and it's very nurturing and soothing. And that can be a little action that you do in the moment to develop that loving adult. Interestingly enough, our feet are also connected to a lot of our organs and to our physical body in many different ways. So at night before you go to bed, doing a simple massage on your foot. Again, safe touch. That's also developing this nurturing of your body. That's giving your body a chance to relax, a chance to release what it's normally had to hold. Mm. And our bodies, again, are also tied to our emotions. It's tied to that inner child. But these are little things you can do to start developing that loving adult. Because you'll also start listening at that time. When you're sitting there for 5 minutes, just massaging your feet, it gives you a chance to listen. And then you're actually able to hear the adolescent. You're able to do all these different parts. But it's the power of that relationship. It's the power of starting to incorporate safe touch. And then I would even practice writing out examples. So let's say a situation happened this past week, and it's coming to your mind now because we're talking about these critical messages. And you're like, oh yeah, I had that situation happen. There were a lot of critical messages. Okay. How would you react if your friend came to you with that same situation? How would you respond to them in an encouraging way? Not in a just, hey, it's okay, yeah, whatever, but in it's okay, you can recover. It's okay, let's dive into this. What happened? Let's talk this out. And actually write down messages of what you would have said. for those of you that need the visual or need to write it. Because again, we all learn differently, and we're learning how to do a lot of this. So I know, Justin, you wanted to end us out tonight talking about kind of a different way of viewing this as well, which is really powerful.
Yeah. I think building off your idea, though, is cool. It's, learning to deconstruct thoughts is important. I think CBT, cognitive behavior therapy at times can get a bad rap or a good rap, but at times it doesn't get used super well. And here's an example, right? So sometimes like a good cue for that critical parent voice is when you start hearing should.
Mm-hmm.
Should. I should have done better. I should have done this. I should have blah, blah, blah. That's a good cue point. Oh, critical parents fire it up. And, as a therapist, it's kind of one of those, let's say someone said, I'm the worst. I'm such a failure. I shouldn't have done it like that. Okay. Well, did the world stop spinning? No. Okay. So the world's still turning on a proper axis? Okay, cool. So was it really that big of a deal? Well, it feels like it. Okay. And it's just going through this process and asking a lot of questions. Mm-hmm. Look, okay, did you mess up? Sure. And this is where that loving adult comes in, the whole point of the show. Okay. All right, maybe you didn't make the best choice in that situation at the board meeting.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so let's learn from that. What could you do different? So instead of letting the should thought take off from the train station at Mach 5 and running our night and running us into the ground so we feel like crap, hold on. Was it really that big of a deal? Are people really going to be remembering this tomorrow? I think 2020 gives us a lot of leeway on this because people are so overwhelmed. We don't remember what happened this morning. But it's breaking down the validity of these thoughts. I should have done better. Okay, well, what would you have done? I don't know. I don't know if there's anything. Okay, so what you're telling me is you did the best you could. Well, yeah. Okay. So you can be compassionate and say, all right, you did the best you could. Good job. Show compassion. Awesome. We're not all going to be firing on all cylinders. Caitlin and I started this show saying, we're half in the bag and delirious, tired this week already. It's Wednesday. And that's okay. I just realized that.
I was like, wait a second.
Yeah. So, look, man, here's the big key, and this won't make sense to a lot of people right now. Keep this in your back pocket. This is something that occurs really late in the game in therapy if you stay long term. Mm-hmm. You do get to a point, and this is why I have a lot of my clients watch The Wizard of Oz. You're like, what? What does that even mean? The whole point of that movie is they go on this long, crazy excursion. And if you haven't seen the movie, hit the mute button because I'm going to tell you the ending. So, but the whole point of the end is they all realized they always had what they always needed. What they needed was already inside. This is what developing the loving adult is. This is what is going from the difference of beginning therapy and beginning middle therapy of the grief of, oh man, like my mom and dad didn't give me those 6 words and a hug like we talked about earlier. Mm-hmm. They could have just told me I love you and that's going to be okay and hug me, and that would have been all I needed. I didn't get that. Okay. Super legitimate part of the journey. Super legit to grieve that. On this part of the journey, it just got to happen, okay? Got it. When we hit late, middle, end therapy, now it's realizing, okay, this is that both and. Being that adult thinker, both and instead of one, other, black, white. That's growing development. That's a loving adult now in charge. Both and. Okay, I can be upset. Mom and dad didn't tell me I love you. It's going to be okay. Or hug me. And I can do that for myself now. I can tell the little bird inside of me, hey, dude, it's going to be okay. I got your back. You're safe with me. I love you. And, hug yourself if you need to or want to. But it's starting to really realize towards the end of therapy, middle end, I can now give myself what I didn't get. And how empowering is that? And so many of us have gone through life and had the power taken away. Some of us were never even given the power in our life to even be taken away. But to start taking some of that power and control back, going, you know what? There's a lot I didn't get. And man, have I had to cry a lot of tears these last, however long this takes, year, 2 years, whatever it is. Longer, shorter, whatever. But you know what? I've come to realize I can do it for myself. I can love on me. And obviously it helps when we've got a good group of friends or loved ones that pour into us. But at the end of the day, it's realizing that as adults, we have everything we need inside. And that's super empowering. It's a little scary, there's responsibility with that. But reality is it's taking that new perspective. And again, if you're just starting therapy, ignore this, keep this in your back pocket till like a year from now or longer, it doesn't matter. If you've been in therapy a while, realize this. You have the ability to give yourself everything that you never got. Because remember, nurturing the kid is actually really simple, which is why the grief is so strong. How can my parents not say a couple of simple phrases and hug me? The adolescent part. Why didn't they just hear me? Why didn't they listen to me? Why didn't they even try to understand me? So just know you can listen to these things. You can nurture. You can love on you. So I'll leave it at that. Hopefully I didn't ruin the Wizard of Oz for anybody. I didn't really tell you the whole ending, just the point of it. But and I want to thank everybody. We really, it says episode 21, but like I said, I screwed up the numbering early in this. So it's really 20 episodes, man. But we did this on a whim.
Yeah.
We did this really just wanted to try something. And Caitlin, thank you for sticking it out through all my shenanigans and us having fun. And
yeah, thank you.
It's been a cool ride. This is going to complete for us episode technically 20, but 21 is going to end season 1 for us. Like I said, though, if you have questions on anything we've covered, either on our Facebook page, Instagram, any of these videos, shoot us a direct message on either Facebook, Instagram, and if we get enough questions between 5 and 7, we'll do an episode in a couple weeks to kind of answer those. Otherwise, we won't really be back on in a formal, structured way here until probably mid-January.
Mm-hmm.
So just keep in mind. But thank you
We'll
guys.
have a holiday edition, though.
Oh yeah. Yep.
There will be a holiday show.
Handling family and in-laws during the holiday season. Woohoo! Yeah, man. Any last words, Caitlin, here at the end of season 1?
That's it. Just thank you guys. It's been a great run. Again, we did this on a whim, so this was huge.
Yeah. And I want you guys all to see my co-therapists, Smokey, Sarah, and the cat, all passed out.
They're working so hard.
Yeah. Yep. Thank y'all. Have a good week. Take care of yourselves.
Yep.
Self-care huge right now. Getting to this election season, holiday seasons, all the things. There's a buildup of 7 months of all this COVID stuff. Man, take care of yourself. Slow yourself down. Go have some fun. Take a break. Go for a walk in nature. Doesn't need to be anything complicated. If you can get away on a trip, Airbnb, great. If not, go to the beach, go for a walk in nature. Do something you enjoy, having fun. You got to take care of yourself. So we'll leave it at that. And we'll see y'all mid-January.
Bye. There you go.
Nice.